Welcome ladies and gents, Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter, or of course you can subscribe to the channel. Let's talk boxing, let's talk about Daniel Dubois' decimation of Trevor Bryan. Now there was an awful lot of sort of technical elements that we spoke about in the preview. They were all there to see. I did think that maybe if Bryan had got his tactics right, or not his tactics, but shown a little bit more heart, let's put it that way, he could have frustrated Dubois at points and we could have had some questions answered about the mentality of Daniel Dubois at this point. That wasn't to be though, because Dubois was in control from start to finish really, apart from in the fourth round before the knockout. We'll get to that in a moment. In the first round it became quite apparent that the upper body agility of Trevor Bryan that we spoke about in the preview that could frustrate Dubois, that could be making him miss, was there. You could see how slippery he was dipping at the hip, he was rolling with shots. Despite the way he looks, there was some agility there, but he looked like a rabbit caught in the headlights. He was not throwing anything back. He was clearly in survival mode from the very first round, and Daniel Dubois was composed. You know, in the preview I spoke about the fact that when you've got a guy like Trevor Bryan, one of the things that he has, although he can be sort of unorthodox and awkward when he's in a defensive mindset and he can make you miss, when he's in an offensive mindset, his head can stay on a stick, and that you can't make those errors against a guy like Dubois. Eventually he's going to catch you with shots and he's going to take you out, right? But that when he's in that mode of I want to exchange, I'm going to hold my feet, that's an opportunity to hurt him, or potentially with that second phase of attack. He wasn't engaging in that second phase of attack, Daniel Dubois. He would throw a flurry. Even if he had success, he would then step back out. And I understand why he would do that early on, because you don't really know what the other guy's got in his arsenal. Is he luring you in? Is he rolling with shots and all of a sudden he's going to come up with a big shot and take you out? You can't take that risk. So as long as you're winning the exchanges and you're comfortable, make sure you look composed. And he had a good head on his shoulders in that regard. He was composed for the majority of it. He wasn't getting overexcited, but he was missing with that right hand. And he continued to miss in that second round. He was clearly out jabbing Trevor Bryan, who was not willing to let his hands go. We spoke about the fact that Bryan had a good jab, and we'll get to that later because you start to see a little bit more of it in the fourth. But in the second round, again, he was not willing to let go. And what you saw is that when Bryan did open up in that second round, just a little bit with the jab towards the end of the round, he landed it on a couple of occasions. But he was clearly trying to ease his way in. The way I saw it is he was thinking, let me try and get this guy in the latter half of the fight. He's a big, muscular, heavy, thick-set dude. We're in the humidity of Florida right here. Let's see if we can get him tired and then we'll try and jump on him late on. That was probably the mentality. Although I did feel, like I said, that he looked intimidated. Maybe a better approach would have been to say, you know what, let's just try and land a couple of big shots at least in the first round and the second round. Let's get this kid who's had his demons in the past to doubt himself. He didn't want to go down that route. So by the second round, you're starting to look at this and you're thinking, okay, Dubois got this. He's in complete control. But he's still missing that right hand just a little bit. He's getting overly keen. He's shifting his weight just a little bit over that lead leg when he's trying to punch down every time Trevor Bryan would dip at the hip and take away that right hand essentially. And I'm glad that Carl Frampton pointed that out. He did at points take away the straight right hand of Daniel Dubois. Well, in the third round, it became apparent to me that this was happening more and more, and I wanted to see Dubois switch it up. He had to throw that right hand a bit lower so it's not sailing over his head. Shoot it towards the solar plexus. Alternatively, don't step in as much after you've landed that power jab. Fake your way in. Get the guy to dip. Take half a step back so you haven't committed your weight onto your front leg or beyond your front leg. Take half a step back and then punch down or throw an uppercut or something like that. He wasn't doing that. He was a little bit overly keen. Now, why this might not matter against Trevor Bryan, against another heavyweight that does have agility and can move, a guy like Tyson Fury, a guy like Joseph Parker, a guy like Hrgovic, you know, the more agile heavyweights who can move in and out and can dip a little bit of their own. If you're missing these shots, even guys like Hughie Fury, if you're missing these types of shots, you could get punished for it. They could roll back and throw punches. Just because Trevor Bryan hasn't shown a willingness to try and win the fight, it doesn't mean that will apply to other guys too. So there are little areas that he still needs to work on. He was still entering sometimes in that center line. And you saw a little bit more of that in the fourth round. Bryan finally decided, you know what, I'm going to let go of my hands a little bit here. And he started to jab with Dubois. And you saw that he was having success too. There were a couple of moments as well where he was the one who landed a couple of jabs and Dubois did not. So you're starting to look at this and think, okay, now he's going to start to show a little bit more ambition. This could become a little bit more interesting from a technical perspective. Then he got caught with a left hook. He fell back onto the ropes. And that changed the fight really. And at this point, it felt like the writing was on the wall. But even then, you saw the agility on the ropes, the rolling of the shots, and Dubois was struggling to land. And again, maybe he was headhunting a little bit too much. Maybe he needs to take half a step back, target the body, whatever the case might be. He was clearly in control, but just at times you just felt like you wanted to have the reins on him and just say, chill, Daniel, chill. You don't have to look for the next shot to knock him out. It's coming, relax. Eventually, though, what he did is land a lovely lead left hook, a real highlight, real knockout, a beautiful shot. And we did speak again in the preview about the fact that Trevor Bryan is susceptible to misdirection. So when you've been stepping in with these long, hard jabs the whole fight, like Dubois was, when you then shape up and throw a short left hook instead of a jab, he's going to eat it. He's going to react to it. We also spoke about the fact that he's got this long loop, languid, fluid jab, Trevor Bryan, but he throws it quite from sort of low position, and so the hook over that shot is there for him, for the opponent. And Dubois was also landing right hooks over the jab. So whilst I thought there was the potential here for him to get a little bit frustrated, I did feel as though he was going to get the knockout at some stage. You can't make these sorts of errors against a puncher like Daniel Dubois and get away with it. You're going to get caught at some stage. And whether it was early or sort of a middle round knockout, it was what I expected to see. But it was an easier night even than I expected to see, simply because despite the frustrating elements of Trevor Bryan, that little defensive, those little veteran moves, the little, I guess you could call them journeyman moves almost, right? The little moves that you make that can help you survive. Despite those, he was not marrying it with any real offensive intent. When he did bring that offensive intent into the fourth round, he ended up getting stopped. Maybe he could have waited a little bit more. Maybe he could have stayed in survival mode until the 7th or the 8th, right? And turned it into the sort of fight where he's thinking, you know what, I'm not going to win the fight on points, so let me just wait for this guy to get tired in this humidity and then I'll start to open up. Maybe that's what he should have done. Maybe he went for it a little bit too early, or maybe he should have gone for it a lot earlier, tried to land a couple of big shots, and make Dubois question himself. Whatever the case may be, what he ended up doing, not doing much in the first 3 apart from surviving, and then deciding, you know what, now I'm going to start opening up a bit when he's still fresh, and yet he's got his confidence in there. To me, that was a tactical error from Trevor Bryan. But listen, he was outgunned, he was outmatched. I did not expect him to win the fight. And Daniel Dubois passes the test with flying colours, but I also feel at the same time that he is, there are still some areas there that he needs to work on. Let me know what you think, guys, about Daniel Dubois. Where do you think he goes from here? They were talking about Dillian Whyte post-fight. You heard Shane McGuigan bring that up. It's funny, isn't it, how Dillian Whyte gets knocked out by Tyson Fury, and it's all like all of a sudden the Sharks are smelling blood, right? Like they're ready to just circle and take this guy out. Listen, a lot of his punch resistance has seemingly gone, right? But if he still rolls back those years and he's able to show who Dillian Whyte is, and he's just had a bad night against Tyson Fury, against an elite level heavyweight, we may very well see whether Daniel Dubois still has those demons. That would be a tough fight, right? There's also Joseph Parker that he mentioned himself. I know Joseph Parker has signed with Sky tonight. I don't know how realistic that fight could possibly be to be made. But again, it's one of those where you wonder, right? Well, what's on the horizon for him? Because we didn't learn that much tonight. Has he slayed those demons? Let me know what you think, everyone. Let's also add a little something about Richard Riakporhe. He got the stoppage against Turchi. You know, with Riakporhe, the first round, I was looking at it and I was thinking, this is not a good start for Riakporhe. He's only taking a look, right? But he's just pouring out with the jab. He's just touching the guy on the gloves. He's not doing anything. And Turchi's walking in off at an angle just to his left, trying to stay away from that big right hand of Riakporhe's. And he was able to land some body work, and he landed a nice hook as well, a right hook. And you're thinking, okay, Riakporhe's got to start putting a little something behind this jab. Instead, he wasn't doing that, and he was clearly trying to read his patterns. He was lining them up, and eventually he landed a right hand followed by a left hook to the body. Or was it a left hook and a right hand after? I can't remember right now what the combination was, but the left hook to the body is the one that really hurt Turchi. He went down. He showed a lot of heart in getting up, but his corner stopped the fight. It was a Deontay Wilder-esque performance, right? You've seen this happen a lot from Deontay Wilder. The Gerald Washington type of fights, for instance, whereby he's not doing much. Luis Ortiz, you know, he's taking a look. He's trying to line up that right hand. He's not trying to win the fight on points. And a lot of people have questioned Riakporhe's technical abilities. And they say, listen, he's not the best boxer, but he carries a lot of power. Could it be that he's going to try and clone himself on a Deontay Wilder type approach, whereby he's not willing anymore to try and outbox an opponent? Yeah, that doesn't mean he's going to be giving up rounds on purpose, but his sole focus, his primary focus will be, how can I line this guy up for a power shot? And bear in mind, that was a left hand. We know he carries power in that right hand. And it's hard to say he's the biggest puncher in the division or anything like that, because there are some guys that have proved it against more proven opposition. But he may be. He's one of those guys that carries a sort of power that looks destructive, and it looks like it would be destructive at any level. And so is he going to develop himself into that sort of guy whereby rather than looking to win fights on points, he's going to say, you know what, I accept I'm not the most technically gifted fighter in the world, so I'm going to continue to work on that aspect, but in the meantime, I'm working on timing a guy, lining him up and taking him out. Is Richard Riakporhe the cruiserweight answer to Deontay Wilder? And how do you think he would cope at the highest level in the cruiserweight division. One last thing, let me quickly touch upon ZAK CHELLI. He won the English title tonight against GERMAINE BROWN. Brown was doing some nice, neat technical stuff when he was boxing at range. He wasn't necessarily winning those exchanges. The first sort of 4 rounds, the first 3 out of the first 4 or 5 were swing rounds. They were really close rounds. It depended what you liked. But what then started to happen is that ZAK CHELLI, who was swinging for the fences, began to, especially on that second phase of attack, he began to shorten his shots a little bit. So he'd land that first big shot, and then instead of trying to swing and take the guy's head off with the second shot, he would start to shorten it a bit. He started to land a bit more. And what you saw Germaine do is start to cover up and dip down. So he stopped punching with ZAK CHELLI to deter him. What I would have wanted to have seen him do is rip an uppercut through the center, because he was dipping and forward and then throwing a looping shot over the top, whether it was a left or right. So start throwing that uppercut down the center line. That way, after he lands his first shot, if he's going to dip, he's potentially going to dip onto an uppercut. If you don't hurt him, which you may very well do, but if you don't, it could hurt him enough to deter him from wanting to do that all the time. Alternatively, if you don't want to be exchanging with ZAK CHELLI, if he's too strong, he's hitting too hard, rather than just tying up, you've got to move your legs a little bit. Rather than just dip forward, take the pocket away from him. Stop him from being able to let go of his hands, because at range, it was competitive, right? You had the consistent jabbing and straighter punches and punching with inside the arc of ZAK CHELLI, of Germaine Brown, and then you had ZAK CHELLI leading with power shots that were having success. Rather than, it was one of those of what do you like, rather than allowing it to be that sort of fight whereby you then go inside and all of a sudden it's a mismatch. Take away that inside pocket. He steps in, you step out. Make it a fight at range, so that we're sitting there and we're going, wow, man, what do you prefer? The consistent work of Brown or the more eye-catching work of CHELLI? And it starts to put question marks in the minds of the judges. Instead, what happened was that existed at range, and then when they got up closer, ZAK CHELLI was taking control because of Germaine Brown's tactical choices, really. Yeah, let me know what you think, ladies and gents. Thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know your opinions on all the fights you saw tonight. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.